All right, welcome to another deep dive. We are diving into a story today that's been told and retold for centuries now. The birth of Jesus of Nazareth. We've got excerpts from a text. It's called The Birth of Jesus, an Event That Transformed History. And I've got to say, it's just packed with details. Fascinating stuff.
Yeah, no, it really is a story that has had a truly global impact. We're talking art, music, social movements, even how we think about power.
Oh, for sure.
And leadership and all that.
Exactly. So we're not just going to kind of rehash, the Christmas story you might have heard as a kid. We're going to unpack why this event from over 2,000 years ago still matters today.
Absolutely.
It continues to shape our world. But first, we got to understand the world that Jesus was born into.
Yeah. Imagine Judea under Roman rule.
Right.
This wasn't a peaceful time. There was a lot of political oppression. A lot of people felt like they were living under someone else's thumb.
Right. So you got this simmering tension, right? This longing for somebody to come along and make things right.
And that's where the prophecies come in. For generations, the Jewish people had been reading about a coming Messiah, this chosen one, particularly in the book of Isaiah. And they believed this Messiah would, bring redemption, usher in a new era.
So it's not like Jesus's birth was a total surprise then, right? It was almost like people were waiting for it,
absolutely
looking for someone to fulfill those ancient prophecies.
Absolutely. And that makes the events surrounding his birth even more significant. Now, our main sources for this story are the Gospels of Matthew and Luke in the New Testament. It's kind of like getting two different eyewitness accounts of the same event.
Okay, two perspectives. Let's start with Matthew. I noticed he really emphasizes how Jesus's birth fulfills the Old Testament prophecies. It almost feels like he's speaking directly to a Jewish audience.
Right. And Matthew doesn't shy away from the dramatic elements either. He kicks things off with an angel appearing to Joseph in a dream, telling him that Mary is pregnant by the Holy Spirit.
Wait, hold on. That's a big one. Virgin birth. Right from the start.
Right.
This story is going to be anything but ordinary.
Right off the bat, yeah. Then we have the Magi, these mysterious wise men who travel from the east, following a star to find the newborn king of the Jews.
It's like a scene out of a movie, right? A star guiding the way, a prophecy coming true, a baby whose birth is already causing a stir.
And this is where the political intrigue kicks in.
Uh-oh.
King Herod, who ruled Judea at the time, feels threatened by the arrival of this potential rival.
Right.
He's portrayed as paranoid and ruthless, ordering the infamous massacre of the innocents.
Yeah, that's a dark turn.
Yeah.
Herod literally orders the killing of all male infants in Bethlehem, hoping to eliminate this so-called king of the Jews. It just highlights how precarious Jesus's life was right from the beginning.
Yeah, and the drama continues.
Oh no.
Joseph is warned by an angel in another dream, and he flees with Mary and Jesus to Egypt, escaping Herod's wrath. So you have an incredible story of vulnerability and courage, resilience.
Okay, so Matthew definitely sets the stage with a lot of drama and suspense. We've got prophecy, we've got miracles, political intrigue, a narrow escape. Now, how does Luke's account differ? It seems a bit more, personal, more focused on the human side of the story.
You're right. Luke's gospel feels more poetic, more intimate.
Okay.
He gives us a lot of detail. He draws us into the emotions of the characters.
For example, he describes the Annunciation, the angel Gabriel appearing to Mary, telling her she'll give birth to the Son of God. Talk about a life-changing moment.
Really makes you think about what that must have been like for her, a young woman, in that time receiving such news.
Yeah.
It speaks to her incredible faith and courage.
And then there's this detail about Mary and Joseph traveling to Bethlehem for a Roman census. They're just trying to follow the law like everyone else, and suddenly they're caught up in this monumental event.
Yeah.
It's relatable in a way,
Well, absolutely.
That feeling of the ordinary being disrupted by something extraordinary.
Right, and Luke really emphasizes the humility of Jesus' birth. He's not born in a palace, in a manger, a feeding trough for animals.
It's such a stark contrast, right? You almost expect a king to be born in grandeur and splendor, but instead, it's this incredibly humble setting.
And Luke also highlights the shepherds, These weren't important officials or religious leaders.
Right.
They were ordinary working-class people who were among the first to hear about Jesus' birth.
I love that detail. It just shows how this message, this good news, was meant for everyone, not just the elite.
Absolutely. And then, of course, you have the angels appearing to the shepherds, singing, "Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace to those on whom his favor rests."
Yeah.
It's an image of just pure awe and celebration.
It really captures that sense of wonder and joy, doesn't it? So we've got two distinct accounts, each with its own style and emphasis. Matthew focuses on the drama and prophecy, Luke on the poetry and human touch. But they both tell the story of this incredible event, the birth of Jesus.
And what's so fascinating is that this event, while central to Christianity, has a much broader impact.
Oh, yeah.
It raises all sorts of questions about who Jesus was, what his birth means, and how it continues to shape our world.
See, that's what I love about these deep dives. Like, we're going beyond the surface.
Yeah.
We're getting into the real meat of the story, and that's where we need to talk about incarnation. A theological concept that might sound intimidating, but it's actually key to understanding the impact of Jesus' birth.
Right. Incarnation is the idea that God became human, fully divine, and fully human at the same time. It's a radical concept that has had a huge influence on Christian thought and beyond.
Yeah, it's like mind-blowing when you really think about it, God choosing to become one of us. But how does that connect to the story of Jesus' humble birth in a stable? That's what I'm curious about.
Well, that's where the idea of kenosis comes in.
Kenosis.
Which means self-emptying. It's the idea that Jesus, being God, could have come to earth in any way he wanted.
He could have arrived in a blaze of glory, like a superhero, making a grand entrance.
Exactly. But instead, he chose to be born in a humble stable. It challenges our usual ideas about power and leadership.
It's like saying that true power isn't about dominance or force.
Right.
It's about humility and service. And that's a message that resonates even today.
It absolutely does. And speaking of impact that extends beyond the biblical narrative, think about how this event has evolved into a global celebration that we know as Christmas.
From a humble birth in a stable to a holiday that practically shuts down the world for a few weeks, that's quite a journey.
It is. And tracing how Christmas developed reveals some fascinating historical and cultural layers. For example, did you know that the exact date of Jesus' birth is unknown?
I did not. So how did we land on December 25th?
That's a great question. It was established as the date for Christmas by the Western Church in the 4th century.
So relatively late in the game. Was there a reason for that specific date?
Some scholars believe it was chosen to coincide with existing pagan festivals, like the Roman festival of Sol Invictus, which honored the sun god.
Oh, interesting. So maybe it was a way to make the transition to Christianity a bit smoother?
Possibly. It's a reminder that Christmas, as we know it, is a blend of different cultural traditions and historical influences. Think about all the things we associate with Christmas. Gift-giving, decorating trees, nativity scenes, caroling, they've evolved over centuries, incorporating elements from various cultures and time periods.
It's like this global tapestry, woven together from threads of religion and history and cultural exchange, and it all started with that one event, the birth of Jesus.
Amazing, isn't it?
Amazing. But the impact goes even deeper. We also see it in art, in music, and even in social movements.
Absolutely. And that's what we'll explore in more detail in the next part of our deep dive.
Stay tuned, deep divers, because we're about to uncover how the birth of Jesus continues to inspire and influence the world today. Welcome back, deep divers. Last time we left off talking about how the birth of Jesus sparked this global celebration we know as Christmas.
Right.
But it's more than just a holiday, right? There's this whole other layer of impact when we talk about art, music, and even social change movements.
You're right. It's incredible to see how one event can just ripple out through history and influence.
Oh, yeah.
So many different aspects of human culture.
So where do we even begin? I mean, we could spend hours talking about all the paintings and sculptures and musical masterpieces inspired by the Nativity.
We definitely could, but let's start with a couple of iconic examples.
Okay.
Have you ever seen Da Vinci's The Adoration of the Magi?
Of course. It's one of those images that just sticks with you.
Right.
The way he captures the awe and wonder on the faces of the Magi as they gaze upon the baby Jesus, it's incredible.
Exactly. And then there's Michelangelo's Holy Family in the Uffizi Gallery.
Okay.
The way he depicts Mary's tenderness and Joseph's protective stance over the infant Jesus, so powerful.
Yeah.
These are just two examples, but they demonstrate how the birth of Jesus has captivated artists for centuries.
And let's not forget the music. I mean, just think of Bach's Christmas Oratorio.
Oh, yeah.
Or Handel's Messiah.
Yes.
Those are masterpieces that just evoke the emotions of the story in such a profound way.
They really do. It's like the music transports you back to that time and place, allowing you to experience the awe and joy of the Nativity firsthand. But
the impact goes beyond the arts, doesn't it? We're talking about like real-world change, social movements that have been inspired by the message of Jesus.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to remember that Jesus' message wasn't just about like personal piety or religious rituals.
Right.
It was about love, forgiveness, and social justice. He challenged the status quo, stood up for the marginalized, and called for a more just and compassionate society.
And that message has resonated with people throughout history, inspiring them to work for positive change.
Think about Martin Luther King Jr. and his fight for civil rights. His message of love and nonviolence was deeply rooted in his Christian faith and directly inspired by the teachings of Jesus.
It's amazing to see that connection, how these ancient teachings could fuel a movement for such profound social change in the 20th century.
And it's not just MLK. Mahatma Gandhi's philosophy of nonviolent resistance was also influenced by Jesus' teachings.
Oh, wow.
His belief in the power of love to overcome hate and injustice had deep roots in the message of the Gospels.
So we're seeing how the story of Jesus' birth, this seemingly simple event in a humble stable, has inspired some of the most significant social movements in history.
It's a testament to the enduring power of ideas.
Yeah.
But before we move on, I think it's important to circle back to those theological concepts we touched on earlier, incarnation and kenosis.
You're right, we talked about them in the context of Jesus' birth, but how do they apply to our lives today? It's easy to get lost in like the historical details and miss the bigger picture.
That's a great point. Remember, incarnation is the idea that God became human, fully divine and fully human.
Right, and kenosis is that self-emptying, that willingness to relinquish power and embrace humility.
That's it.
But how do we actually like live those concepts out?
Well, imagine incarnation as a bridge between the divine and the human. It suggests that God isn't distant or removed from our lives, but intimately involved in our joys and sorrows.
So it's about recognizing the divine spark within ourselves and in others.
Exactly. And when we embrace that interconnectedness, it changes how we view the world and how we treat one another.
And kenosis, how does that play out in everyday life?
Think of it this way. How often do we cling to power? Whether it's in our relationships, our work, even just in our own minds. We want to be right, to be in control, to have the last word.
It's so easy to fall into that trap.
But kenosis invites us to let go of that need for control, to embrace humility and serve others. It's like choosing to share your biggest cookie even though you don't have to.
Right.
That's kind of what Jesus did.
Yeah.
He had all the power in the universe, but chose to give it up for the sake of humanity.
It's a radical way of thinking about power.
It is.
It's not about dominance or control, but about selflessness and service.
And it's a message that has profound implications for how we live our lives today.
So we're not just talking about like abstract theological concepts here. We're talking about practical ways to be more compassionate, more just more loving in our interactions with the world.
Exactly. And that brings us back to the lasting legacy of the birth of Jesus. It's a story that continues to challenge us, inspire us, and call us to live differently.
It's not just about celebrating a historical event. It's about carrying that message of hope, love, and justice into the 21st century.
And in the next part of our deep dive, we'll explore what that might look like.
Okay.
What does it mean to embody the spirit of the Nativity in our complex and often challenging world?
Stay tuned, deep divers, because we're going even deeper. Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been unpacking this, story of Jesus's birth, and it's been quite a journey.
It has.
We've gone from a humble stable to this global celebration, explored these theological concepts, seen how this event has inspired art, music, even social change movement.
It's a story that's just woven into the fabric of our world in so many ways.
Yeah. But the question we're grappling with now, I think, is what does this legacy mean for us today?
Right. It's all well and good to talk about historical impact.
Yeah.
But how does the birth of Jesus, this event from over 2,000 years ago, speak to our lives in the 21st century?
Right. It's a big question.
It is a big question.
And I don't think there's a single easy answer.
I don't think so either.
But maybe that's the point, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it's about each of us kind of wrestling with these ideas and figuring out what they mean in our own lives.
Exactly. But there are definitely some common threads that run through this story.
Okay.
Themes that have resonated with people for centuries and continue to be relevant today.
Like what? Give us some food for thought.
Well, one of the most striking things about the Nativity is how it challenges our assumptions about power.
You mean how Jesus was born in a stable, not a palace? How true power is found in, like, humility and service,
That's it.
not dominance or control.
That's exactly. It's a radical idea, especially in a world that often equates power with wealth, with status, with the ability to exert control over others.
It's almost countercultural, isn't it?
It is.
Like that line from the Gospel of Matthew, whoever wants to be great among you must be your servant. It flips the script on how we usually think about leadership and influence.
It does. And I think that message is so important today.
Oh, yeah.
In a world that often feels driven by ego, ambition,
Yeah.
the pursuit of individual gain, the Nativity invites us to consider a different way of being in the world,
Okay.
a way that prioritizes compassion, service, and the well-being of others.
It's a call to, like, use whatever power we have, no matter how big or small, to make a positive impact.
And it connects to another key theme, the emphasis on social justice.
Okay.
Throughout his life, Jesus championed the marginalized, the outcasts, the forgotten. He spoke truth to power and challenged social norms that perpetuated injustice and inequality.
So it's not just about being nice or doing, like, random acts of kindness. It's about, like, actively working to create a more just and equitable world
Yes.
for everyone.
Right. And that legacy continues to inspire movements for social change today. Think about the fight for racial justice, economic equality, environmental sustainability. These movements are all rooted in the belief that every human being deserves dignity and respect.
And that we have a responsibility to, like, speak up and act when we see injustice happening.
Yes.
It's not enough to just sit on the sidelines and hope things will get better on their own.
Exactly. And that brings us to perhaps the most enduring theme of all.
Hope.
The birth of Jesus, even amidst difficult circumstances, offers a message of hope for a world transformed by love and compassion.
It's like saying, even in the darkest of times, there's always a glimmer of light, a reason to believe that things can get better.
And that hope isn't passive.
Right.
It's active. It compels us to work towards creating that better world, to embody the values of love, forgiveness, and justice in our own lives.
So we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. We've explored the historical context, the theological implications, the cultural impact, and even, like, the personal challenges that this story presents.
And if there's one thing I hope to take away from this,
Yeah.
it's that the story of Jesus' birth isn't just a historical event or a religious doctrine. It's a living, breathing narrative that continues to speak to us today.
It's a story that invites us to think differently about power, to act compassionately, and to never lose hope in the possibility of a better world.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final thought. Imagine if Jesus were born today.
Okay.
In our world, with all its complexities and challenges, how might his message resonate in the 21st century? What impact might he have?
That's a powerful question.
It is.
It challenges us to connect these, like, ancient stories to our modern lives, to find meaning and inspiration in their timeless wisdom.
So keep exploring, keep questioning, keep diving deep.
Yeah.
The journey doesn't end here.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep those brains buzzing.